Brother. I mean, come on. God damn, dude. Oh. Comprehensive investigative reporting from Aubrey, friend of the show, that came out a year and change ago on Giuffre Epstein. More relevant now than ever before.
Federal judge has ordered the release of the identities of dozens of people mentioned in the court documents related to convicted pedophile Giuffre Epstein.
The papers could reveal more than 150 people who were associated with Epstein.
Epstein was an operator. Even if you take the absolute minimalist view of what Epstein could have been up to, he was a crook through and through.
How many other people has this happened to? How many other stories are sitting in a vault, in an ABC News or an NBC News vault, of powerful people that they wanted to preserve their relationship with?
On the morning of December 5th, 2010, Woody Allen was photographed here with his wife and stepdaughter, leaving the Upper East Side mansion of New York financier and at that point recently convicted pedophile Giuffre Edward Epstein. Over a decade ago, I doubt the average American had even heard the name Giuffre Epstein. Yet, the 57-year-old had just gotten off house arrest for soliciting a minor for prostitution and registered as a sex offender only 3 months prior to the big celebration he was throwing for the Duke of York, and then fourth in line to the throne, Prince Andrew, as journalist Alexandra Wolf reported all the way back in 2011. While several of his guests that day, which included the ABC anchor George Stephanopoulos, CBS personalities Katie Couric and Charlie Rose, and comedian Chelsea Handler, have all expressed regret for not doing more research into their host, except for Charlie Rose, who was actually pretty close to Epstein and would even meet girls through him. All of these people were convening that day in a $77 million mansion that would later be dubbed a House of Depravity by Epstein's victims. Physicist Lawrence Krauss, despite knowing exactly why Epstein had spent time in jail, told the Daily Beast in 2011, "I do not feel tarnished in any way by my relationship with Giuffre. I feel raised by it." Everyone and their dog is now aware that Giuffre Epstein had connections in the highest of high places, but the specific nature of those connections has always largely been shrouded in mystery, and that may be by design. These connections include, but of course are not limited to, well-respected scientists, scholars, actors, lawyers, real estate moguls, US presidents, and international leaders from all around the globe. While Prince Andrew's now infamous camaraderie with Epstein made quite the splash in British media 10 years ago,
Prince Andrew's ex-wife was given £15,000 by his American friend Giuffre Epstein to pay off some of her debts. That friend, a convicted sex offender.
The American press stayed unusually quiet back then. This Daily Beast article was one exception, but even Wolf herself asks in it why nobody, particularly New York socialites, seemed to know or even care about what Epstein had just admitted to doing in Palm Beach. Remember, this dinner party happened 3 years after Epstein very publicly pled guilty to procuring a minor for sex, and 8 years before he would be arrested again on federal charges of human trafficking, then die under mysterious circumstances that remain the subject of intense debate today, even becoming somewhat of a running joke.
Thank you so much, James.
Yep. And remember, Epstein didn't kill himself.
Okay, got it. Very clever.
And now, with a judge recently ordering thousands of past court documents to be unsealed, Epstein and friends are back under the spotlight of public scrutiny once again, with all the pop-bass, pop-crave, poo-crave Twitter accounts teasing the news like it was a new Travis Scott album or something. For a while, you could even place bets on which celebrities might be exposed as an Epstein client.
Did you see Bet Online is letting people bet money on who will be on the Epstein list? I'm doing that right now. Wait, what? An official betting pool for it? Harvey Weinstein, easy slam dunk. Hillary, probably. Joe Biden, I think he's probably too old. Like, I don't even think he knows what planes are right now.
Which is a long way of saying that despite the man himself being long gone, the Epstein Saga is anything but over. This story has fascinated and frustrated me for as long as I've been paying attention to it. And the more you dig in, the more questions seem to crop up. It's a complex tale, often mired in conspiracy and littered with political interests.
Bill Clinton.
Nice guy. Got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with the famous island with Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of problems.
My brother in Christ, you were on the plane! This video not only attempts to outline the years-long behavior Epstein and company were said to participate in, it's also about shedding light on what we still don't know, and what we may very well never know. We won't get to everything today, since this is only one part of what will eventually be a 3-part series, but I hope it can at least be a starting point for those not as privy to the timeline of the late trafficker's reign of terror, and those who maintained correspondence with the man even after his guilt became abundantly clear. Everyone now knows the name Jeffrey Epstein, but the question I intend on answering is how it all came to this.
Tonight, more newly unsealed court documents just released involving accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein.
Tonight, the blast radius from Jeffrey Epstein's reach continues to grow.
The accuser in the case did claim that she met the former president on Epstein's private island.
Jeffrey Epstein's mansion was a hive of activity today amid uproar over his suicide behind bars.
Jeffrey Epstein victims recounted in sworn deposition.
First video I ever watched of Tyler Olivero was him unironically swimming to the Jeffrey Epstein mansion, Little St. James Island. Sorry, not the mansion. Swimming to Little St. James Island. And even then, I thought that he has some sus vibes. Since then, of course, he's become Tyler Hitler Vera. Years ago, tried to go to the Jeffrey Epstein Island, Little St. James Island. And, you know, he was chased off by some security, if I recall. I remember thinking to myself, this motherfucker has some sus-ass vibes, bro. Yeah, it was a jet ski. Since then, he's gone full Hitler, of course.
It's about the many powerful and famous men they met in Jeffrey Epstein's orbit.
I don't know what to make out of these documents. I don't know how these lists were compiled. And I have nothing to do with that. You know, that's not my business. What I'm concerned about is my brother's murder.
I'm talking about Jeff Epstein, the New York financier.
Yes! We're talking about the same Jeff Epstein.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
I never heard.
Oh, it was a big story in the news. Huge.
Jeff Epstein.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure, with respect, if there was some news about Jeff Epstein, I would have heard.
But let's just pause for a moment here and allow today's sponsor, Ground News, to help us understand how Jeffrey Epstein, Jimmy Kimmel, and my mortal enemy as a Cowboys fan, Aaron Rodgers, all wound up in the same sentence recently. See, the Ground News app and website gather related news articles from around the world and provide context about the source of the information for a more accurate understanding of current events. So,
it's still Ethical Reacts. It's just, this is a year-old video, so the direct link doesn't work anymore.
Going to ground.news/Aubrey right now. You can even get 30% off the Vantage plan if you subscribe through my link, which is what I use, or try it for less than $1 this month. Huge thanks again to the wonderful people at Ground News for sponsoring this video and helping us all see through misinformation and media bias.
Lots of people doing lots of hard work, and hard work didn't translate into success either. It wasn't what you do or how hard you work.
Has Ground News ever offered you money? I think not me directly, but Fear and I think we said no. Like, we almost did a Ground News ad, or did we do a Ground News ad on Fear and? I can't remember. I think in the process of, like, don't they list you as unreliable? No, Ground News doesn't list anyone personally. They rely on other media analysts like Ad Fontes Media, which has that famous laughable chart that puts me in the same as like Alex Jones. That puts me as like the leftist Alex Jones media bias chart. But it's really funny because that bias chart is not only hilarious because it places me in the same wavelength as Alex Jones, which is so ridiculous, even though all my haters love using that. It also ranks like MSNBC and Breitbart as at the same level of like competence. People have not paid attention because they just love being like, oh yeah, this media bias chart shows us on. at the same level as Alex Jones. And then they just like don't look at anything else, I guess. But that chart is insane. Yeah, this is the one. Like, look. Wait, this isn't even the whole thing. There's like, yeah, they put me down here at contains misleading info, also because, you know, Israel. And then, wait, where's Alex Jones? They don't even have Alex Jones on here. Yeah, I'm at the same wavelength as Mike Lindell. But what's really funny about it is that they have like an insane approach to this, like putting Fox News Live at a higher degree of factual reporting than like Christian Amanpour, for example, or Inside Story, CNN Newsnight. Like Fox News Live as a higher degree and is less biased than all of CNN combined. 60 Minutes. They also have Russell Brand as a they have Russell Brand as like a in the middle of the ideological boundaries. They have Russia Today having less, like they have Russia Today at a higher degree of news value and reliability than myself. Literally a state broadcaster for Russia I don't even use. But again, most people don't realize that because they're just so hyper focused on this shit. But yeah, right there with my goats, Breakthrough News is the PSL one, right? Yep, me and Breakthrough News. My goats over at Party for Socialism and Liberation in the least reliable and most extreme leftist. Latest one. Oh, here's a more comprehensive one. But anyway, I don't think that Ground News does like serious, like they don't conduct their own investigation or like media bias charts. They just rely on like Ad Fontes Media and all these other stupid outlets. But yeah, this one is the most comprehensive one, and I love this one. Look at this one. They even have Destiny on there as well. Because I mean, anyone who puts me down here probably is a Destiny head to begin with. But where is it? Look, they got Joe Rogan above me. Like literally the most anti-vax out there is more reliable. A guy who covers misinformation and false narratives that Republicans are spreading. Half of this side of the spectrum I actively cover because they spread unimaginable, untold amounts of misinformation. And they have these like all of these like New York Post, the Washington Examiner, Fox News, Quillette. Someone clearly that works there has a bone to pick and is, placed me down here, but I don't really give a shit. No one obviously takes this seriously. And I don't even think Ground News realizes that this is like a really stupid list. I feel like stuff like this is just made by people who don't understand the concept of satire, inside jokes, internet memes, which you employ frequently in the middle of your serious news commentary. Like people don't watch you in the same way that they watch Wolf Blitzer, and they don't claim to be, and you don't claim to be a Wolf Blitzer style personality. Yeah, but I have more accuracy than many of these other outlets, both on the left and right. This is precisely the reason why outlets both on the left and right come to me when they talk about when they want to cover how I tackle misinformation online. It is what it is, though. Yeah, Barstool, Breitbart clears me, Barstool clears me. But it's not just about me. I need you to understand, like the list in and of itself is so busted that they have Jezebel, MSNBC, Media Matters lower on the reliability and news value than New York Post or the Washington Examiner. Okay? Like that, let's not even talk about me. If you want to understand their biases, if you want to understand how stupid these guys are and how slanted to the right they are, look at the way that they cover right-wing broadcasters like Russell Brand, who is a literal and also a complete nut job. They present him as like center-right, skews right. Joe Rogan skews right. Endorse Donald Trump. How can you skew right? If this list was like a little bit sincere and wasn't like incredibly slanted on the right, half of these right-wing channels that they have up here would literally be down in the bottom right corner, okay? Most right-wing outlets, all the way from the most mainstream, like Fox News, down to the Ben Shapiro's of the world and the BillO'Reilly.coms of the world and the Hannity broadcasts, all the way to Candace Owens, would be in the unreliable, contains misleading info and contains inaccurate, fabricated information side of things. It's ironic because the media bias chart, or Ad Fontes Media that uses the media bias chart, is basically my job. Like, my job is to show you the biases that many media outlets have, regardless of their supposed independence, right? Like, that is literally what I do professionally. So, of course, they maybe see me as market competition and have put me down here. But luckily for us, no one really cares about this, even though Ground News does use it amongst many other media bias charts in their reliability and bias metrics.
And one of them is lots of it, in fact, turns out to be not necessarily who you knew, but who you came in contact with.
One of the most robust biographies of Jeffrey Epstein we have was written by his own legal defense team following his initial indictment in Palm Beach, handed over to state prosecutors in 2007 by one of Epstein's lawyers, who also made sure to attach a smug, handwritten note that read, "Enjoy some fun reading on your defendant." Obtained in 2019 by the Palm Beach Post, the generous wording of this thing should be entirely expected. I mean, it was written by his defense team after all. It glowingly recounts all the times Epstein lent a helping hand to the people around him, and includes testimonies of former girlfriends Eva Anderson and Ghislaine Maxwell. Being sure to mention that the reason Epstein has shied away from becoming a parent is because the demands of his business would not allow him the kind of time and presence needed to be a good parent. I'm sure that's what it is. To back up a little here, it also notes that Epstein was born in Coney Island, Brooklyn, New York in January 1953. Jeffrey and his younger brother Mark were raised in a middle-class environment by their two parents.
If you click on the outlets, it breaks down the article by rating, and it rates things like factual reporting on global warming as leans left. That's funny. I don't even think it's their own ideological leanings there. I think it's more so the ironically biased media bias charts that they use.
Pauline, a school aide, and Seymour, a groundskeeper for the city of New York. It's always mentioned that he liked to play the piano and that he did so well academically that he was able to graduate Lafayette High School 2 years early when he was just 16, before going on to study math and physics at the Cooper Union for a few years. Epstein never graduated, but he did transfer to NYU, where he went.
Just admit you're biased, Lamont. Wait, what? There's never been a moment where I haven't. Yeah. Oh, you mean everyone is biased and that's good, but Ground News obscures that even more? Yeah, no, of course. I am biased. I've never not admitted that. I think it's more honest to admit what your bias is. I wear it on my sleeve, which to the dumbest guys out there, that comes across as like being dishonest. When it's funny because, like, no, I think it's more honest that you say what your opinion is. This doesn't mean that I won't, like, look at verifiable information all of a sudden. My job, a big part of my job is to walk you through the process of going through the news, is to hold your hand and teach you media literacy, is to explain to you, how outlets work with all of the knowledge that I have on the inner workings of many of these media companies. That's literally what I do. And not only that, but also I think that people who pretend to be unbiased or act as though they are delivering the news objectively are actually lying. They're lying harder than even Fox News does. Well, I guess Fox News technically does also, outside of a court defamation suit, will say that they're unbiased and the most trusted resource in news. When they're, of course, in a court case for defamation, then they'll be like, oh, we're just entertainment. Don't take us seriously. They posted you speaking to your audience of 40,000 people like they've discovered a hidden secret. See, he admitted it. Yeah. My biases come from my convictions, from having a politics that is based around having empathy for all.
but also not graduate. So the natural question becomes, how did a two-time college dropout get a job teaching math at the prestigious Dalton School the same year he left NYU behind? After all, the Dalton schools produced a number of notable alumni, including Chevy Chase, Anderson Cooper, Sean Ono Lennon, and specifically while Epstein was there, Prudence Murdoch, daughter of Fox News founder Rupert Murdoch, and actress Jennifer Grey, according to NPR. The New York Times reports that the school's headmaster at the time Epstein was hired was Donald Barr, who, fun fact, is the father of William Barr, the U.S. Attorney General under Trump, who you may know for being in charge of the DOJ when Epstein died in custody decades later, which is just one of the many strange tidbits we'll see throughout this story, like the fact that Donald Barr once wrote a book called Space Relations, about a planet ruled by oligarchs who engage in child sex slavery. So glad that's something I know, and now so do you. As former Dalton social studies teacher Susan Semel told The Times, Barr was explicitly looking to hire teachers with less conventional backgrounds in the field. And while Epstein was about as unconventional as it got, he was barely 21 years old, had no experience in the world of education. I mean, he's a two-time dropout and would show up to school wearing fur coats and gold chains that would dangle in front of his grossly exposed hairy chest. I'm sorry for the mental image, but I think it's worth illustrating here in detail. His tenure at Dalton, though, wouldn't last long, according to the interim headmaster, who alluded to Epstein's lack of effectiveness. If you ask his students what they thought about the eccentric instructor, the consensus seems to vary. Some described him as caring and attentive, while others recall a clear inappropriateness about the way he conducted himself. It's also been reported that he'd attend student parties where underage drinking would occur, to the point that it would become widely talked about among the school. Epstein's bizarre behavior even made it all the way up to the headmaster that replaced Barr, Gardner Dunnan, whose attorney has since told The Times he denies being aware of any concerns of Epstein's conduct. It's also worth noting that Dunham himself was later accused of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old. Epstein may have been out at Dalton, but he sure wasn't down on his luck, struggling to find his next gig either. Ever since the beginning, one of his few talents may have been his ability to suck up to the gaggle of powerful people in his vicinity. Robert Couturier, an interior designer who knew Epstein during the 80s, told Vanity Fair in 2021 that Epstein was a
Wait, I have a friend that I recommend you to watch, and his response was, I don't like Hasan. I watched a couple of YouTube essays about him, and I don't like how he speaks in absolutes, like he's always right, especially when he's wrong about Ukraine and Russia. And when I asked, have you ever watched or listened to what you said in full, he said no. That's the kind of people that can be easily swayed by the list. I know, but the easiest solution to that is to convince them to watch one video or to watch like one particular thing or watch the stream. I make my content readily available for free for everyone to enjoy wherever they want to. Not only that, but also on top of that, people can even literally make money off of the content. The reality of the matter is, the Piker Broadcasting Service is sponsored by you, the viewers, for you, the viewers.
With a woman named Leon Koppel telling the Miami Herald to give Jeff credit. He knew how to woo people, how to schmooze, and she would know her father, Ace Greenberg, is the one who gave Epstein a job at Bear Stearns, a now failed investment bank on Wall Street. Greenberg, Bear Stearns chairman who was reportedly introduced to Epstein through Dalton, was clearly fascinated in the young teacher and saw great potential for him in the economic world despite his lack of experience in, well, anything that wasn't sniffing the farts of the most powerful people in the room. Something I find odd is that Epstein miraculously kept finding himself in these highly desirable job positions when he was less than qualified to fulfill them. He was a lackluster candidate at best, yet he was still, for some reason, being paid by billionaires like Leon Black extraordinarily well, better than most money managers would have been getting paid, in fact, begging the question, what exactly made Epstein so uniquely appealing to these people? I mean, they could have hired anyone in the world to do a better job for a way lower rate. It doesn't make sense. But Black and Greenberg weren't the only fans of the underqualified 20-something. Even the future CEO of Bear Stearns, James Kane, was happy to take Epstein under his wing during his time at the firm, as Time magazine reported that Epstein worked his way up from a lowly junior assistant to a floor trader before becoming a limited partner in 1980. The same year, Cosmopolitan
had a 4-year tear, dude. 4-year tear. Didn't graduate college. 2-time dropout. Gets fired from his previous job as a math teacher. He's being weird. And in 4 years, he goes from junior assistant, lowly junior assistant, to freaking partner, no degree, just a crackpot at doing numbers, I guess. He's just that good.
Floor trader before becoming a limited partner in 1980. The same year, Cosmopolitan crowned him Bachelor of the Month with this little magazine.
The thing is, like, I don't think he was already an asset at this point. I think about this all the time. I've thought about this quite a bit. Like, what is the point where there's like a turn? You know what I mean? Because I don't think he's like a asset at the age of like 21, you know what I mean? I assume that there was probably I assume that he was good with like wheeling and dealing people at that point, and because remember, this is like 70s into the 80s, so this is like still at the end of like the firm handshake era, as I like to call it, because like your parents will say like, back in my day, you used to get a job when you gave a firm handshake and then you could have a house. Like, so I think in that era, if you were like even a little bit interesting and could yap, you could elevate fairly fast, maybe. Or maybe he was like a sleazeball that was willing to do things that others weren't, you know?
Snippet that claimed the 27-year-old talks only to people who make over $1 million a year. If you're a cute Texas girl, write this New York dynamo at 55 Water Street. All I can hope now is that no Texas girl actually did that. He left the next year to start his own thing, but continued trading with Bear Stearns until their collapse in 2008. Around the time Epstein was experiencing somewhat of a collapse of his own. But don't worry, he'd still have plenty of ways to move massive hordes of money around all the way up until his death. But let's just put all of that to the side for a second. First, talk about one of Epstein's more lucrative connections he made up until this point. A peculiar little character by the name of Les Wexner, whose real-time net worth hovers around a humble $6 billion, is the 86-year-old founder of a global retailing empire. Launching the clothing company The Limited all the way back in 1963, Wexner went on to make a series of business acquisitions that allowed his influence to expand exponentially over the following decades. He acquired Victoria's Secret in 1982, Abercrombie & Fitch in 1988, Bath & Body Works in 1990, and by 2003, Fortune magazine considered Limited Brands the most admired specialty retailer in the world. And at that point in time, Wexner's financial manager was none other than Jeffrey Epstein.
Yep.
His ties to Columbus native Wexner have been brought into the national spotlight.
The genesis of Epstein and Wexner's decades-long close friendship is somewhat of a debate due in part to how murky Epstein's life became after leaving Bear Stearns, but also thanks to Epstein's conflicting answers as to which year the two buddies officially met. First bragging about the investment advice he gave to Wexner in 1986, only to seemingly backtrack and say he didn't begin advising him until 1989, actually. Regardless, Wexner didn't shy away from describing to Vanity Fair just how close the two were, calling Epstein very smart with a combination of excellent judgment and unusually high standards. Whatever that means. But then again, this was his, quote, most loyal friend, at least in 2003. And I know you may be wondering, hey, this was years before Jeffrey Epstein got publicly exposed as a serial sex trafficker, so is it really that fair to criticize the guy if he didn't know Epstein was bad until at least 2008? And I might agree with that. If Wexner hadn't been so personally involved with the man to the point where Epstein reportedly told a friend that Wexner knows everything about me. He knows every experience I've had. With Vanity Fair also noting that Wexner was warned hundreds of times by Robert Meister, who originally introduced the two men, to drop Epstein after learning about his sexual proclivities before.
Soon after introducing Wexner and Epstein, Meister started hearing disturbing stories about Epstein's sexual proclivities. Think of whatever the worst thing anyone can do is, and Epstein did them all, Meister said. The breaking point came when Epstein showed up unannounced at Meister's Park Avenue apartment with 5 models for Meister's sexual entertainment. Epstein thought he was bringing me a gift, Meister recalled. I told him, get the fuck out, and I never want to see you again.
2008. But it wasn't just Meister sounding...
Okay, the fact that he just like immediately rolled up with 5 girls means that at that point, he's just like, he's straight up doing this, right? So I assume that this is something that he consistently did, just like either through coercion, persuasion. At a certain point, the persuasion turned into coercion, obviously, but maybe at first he was doing this through persuasion, and then that's how he was elevating himself, because he was like known as like maybe a party guy amongst the Bear Stearns crowd or whatever. And then eventually it got to a point where he was basically doing this for as an intelligence asset.
The alarm bells. Harold Levin and Jerry Merritt, who both worked for Wexner, told Vanity Fair they too warned their boss of Epstein's shadiness. Yet despite it all, to this day, Wexner denies knowing anything about his former best friend's criminal behavior, telling employees he was never aware of the illegal activity and would never have guessed that a person I employed more than a decade ago could have caused such pain to so many people, even though he would have known exactly that. In fact, I find it basically impossible for Wexner to not know that his, quote, most loyal friend had been going around and lying to women about his relationship with Victoria's Secret by falsely labeling himself a modeling recruiter, according to one police report, which also included the claim that Epstein had groped model Alicia Arden in 1997. And that's not to mention when a year prior, an artist named Maria Farmer reached out to authorities claiming Epstein had assaulted her while working on Wexner's Ohio property. She filed a police report, but somehow Wexner never caught wind of any of that, I guess, and didn't cut ties until 18 months after charges were brought against Epstein in Palm Beach. In fact, Epstein not only remained Wexner's power of attorney for almost 2 decades, he also served as a trustee on the board of the Wexner Foundation, oversaw the construction of his super yacht, and even drafted a prenup for Wexner and his wife. And if that wasn't enough, Wexner would reportedly sell Epstein a Boeing 727 for $10 million in 2000, and also allow Epstein to take possession of his multi-million-dollar Upper East Side mansion for the low price of free, which is a long way.
Yeah, I mean, Les Wexner is like the guy that gave him the unlimited amount of power, finances. Like, he is one of the primary responsible parties here. That is the reason why people think that they had a potential romantic involvement, potential romantic relationship. E.T. owns your ass? Extraterrestrial? Like the alien? What does that even mean? Entertainment Tonight? I don't even understand what these guys... Sometimes people come in here and try to own me, I guess, but then in the process, they just... Epstein was not... He was in a file, which isn't even illegal in most countries outside the US. You're completely normal, actually. Brother, you are the least normal person on the planet. I promise you. What the... The only difference... The people that say, actually, it's a phobophilia are basically saying there are minors that they would choose to... Okay? Oh, maybe he means Epoch Times owns your ass. That's all you're saying. Gaia, place. The Daily Bugle owns you.
Saying that there's a special place in the afterlife for Mr. Wexner. While we're on the subject, one of the greatest mysteries surrounding Jeffrey Epstein to this day is where he acquired the massive fortune he used to bankroll his decades of international criminal activity. He's usually referred to in the news as a billionaire, but we really don't know how much money he exactly had at his peak. Prosecutors in 2019 estimated he had a net worth of at least $500 million, but the fact that we have no definitive explanation for where any of that really came from should infuriate everyone watching this. Now, Wexner is commonly speculated to at least be in part responsible for the digits in Epstein's bank account. After all, he did claim Epstein misappropriated vast sums of money from him and his family only after his, quote, most loyal friend's arrest, of course. But even if Epstein ripped off one of Wexner's charities for a quick and easy $46 million, that would barely account for the rest of his gargantuan wealth. So naturally, people are kind of forced to just guess. Some of the current acting theories have to do with blackmail, which we will explore in part 2, money laundering, and his possible connection to one of the largest Ponzi schemes in American history. There's a little gap in the resume we've discussed so far. After working for Bear Stearns and before becoming Les Wexner's appointed hatchet man, Epstein began his own consulting firm, working as a bounty hunter in his own words to help clients recover stolen money, which further brought him into contact with some very rich individuals, claiming he wouldn't do business with anyone not a billionaire, even brushing elbows with members of international governments, as Vanity Fair wrote in that 2003 article. Maybe this is why law enforcement discovered a mysterious passport after a raid made on his home in 2019, which exhibited Epstein's image next to a fake name and a noted place of residence in Saudi Arabia.
This is also part of the reason why, because people keep asking, like, well, how do you have, like, what is the amount of evidence what is the evidence that you have for Jeffrey Epstein being like an intelligence asset? Numerous passports, a local residence in Riyadh, affiliations with other known heads of intelligence agencies. So alongside, of course, you know, prime ministers and numerous heads of state. Also, the little bit about Alexander Acosta, who said, and actually never really clarified one way or another, that in the process of his prosecution, he was told by federal agents that he was a federal asset and that he should be left alone, which played a role in the sweetheart plea bargain that he got for trafficking minors.
I promise we'll get to the Ponzi scheme thing in a second. Okay, we're almost there. His lawyers at the time said he needed this fake ID for protection as a Jewish person traveling regularly to the Middle East. Why was he going to the Middle East, you ask? Well, one of Epstein's clients at this time was identified by journalist Vicky Ward as Adnan Khashoggi, who, among other things, was a middleman in the Iran-Contra scandal who helped smuggle cash for the Marcos family out of the Philippines. During his travels overseas is where Epstein was reportedly introduced by alleged arms dealer Douglas Leese, known for his involvement in a multi-billion-dollar weapons deal between Saudi Arabia and the United Kingdom, to American businessman and future convicted fraudster Stephen Hoffenberg. Hoffenberg, over the next several decades, would spend 18 years behind bars for his involvement in a $475 million financial scheme that he now says Epstein masterminded. Okay, see, I told you we'd get to the Ponzi scheme thing eventually. It just took a minute, but thanks for sticking by. Hoffenberg told NPR.
Yes, Adnan Khashoggi is the father of Jamal Khashoggi. Yes, or uncle. Is it uncle or father? Might be his uncle. But yes.
In 2019, that he considered Epstein to be brilliant, extraordinarily gifted and talented in convincing people to buy from him. And also he was a criminal mastermind, by the way. The criminal enterprise that Hoffenberg is describing rather openly here went by the pretty uncreative name of Towers Financial. Hoffenberg and his self-described best friend, Epstein, who worked as a paid consultant through the 80s and 90s, ran a team of people on Wall Street, investment people that raised these $1 billion illegally, as Hoffenberg told CBS News, feeling the need to emphasize he was my guy, my wingman, which is personally not a term I would use to describe Jeffrey Epstein in any circumstance, but over the course of 5 years, prosecutors allege the company raised 9 figures, almost $500 million of investors' money by selling them fake bonds. They'd then use the money to repay earlier investors while pocketing the difference. A classic Ponzi that you may be shocked to hear lasted as long as it did, but keep in mind, this was a pre-Bernie Madoff era, so a financial fraud of this scale was almost unheard of in the early 90s. The strangest part of it all, however, is that despite multiple parties being so able to recall Epstein as a prominent component of the Ponzi scheme, Epstein himself was never charged alongside his buddy Stephen Hoffenberg, who pled guilty to 5 criminal charges in 1995. As Terrence Corrigan, a lawyer representing over 2,800 people defrauded by Towers, told CBS, as I understood, Epstein was sort of a senior VP. If he was not the number 2 guy, he was certainly the number 2 or number 3 person at the firm. I know we saw organization charts, and yes, Epstein's name was on them. With another attorney, one representing Towers Financial, reinforcing
my main issue with the blackmail is a part of intelligence operations theory is that Epstein seems to have primarily girls and young women for his own enjoyment. Sharing them with others seemed to have been a side project. Wouldn't he have abstained from doing it on his own when not for blackmail purposes if it was all at the Mossad's behest? No, I think he was personally a pedophile and therefore knew how to procure victims, minor victims, as a consequence of his own personal pedophilia, and therefore his own personal pedophilia played a formative role in the blackmailing operations. None of this is mutually exclusive. You can be a personal pedophile and also do pedophilia blackmail. As a matter of fact, who do you think are most likely to be confidential informants, or who do you think are most likely to be assets for intelligence? It's people that are already engaged in criminal enterprise. It's one of the quickest ways to grab someone arrest them and then not prosecute them for further use in the future. But yeah, as far as the primarily of abused girls and young women for his own enjoyment, I think I call as well. That's just Ghislaine Maxwell's testimony, and she's not dead. So I assume that testimony is part of the reason why she's not dead. Do you understand? Because I feel like anyone who would uncover the connective tissue between Jeffrey Epstein and all of these other like intelligence communities, or anyone who even entertains that discovery, that revelation, will most likely no longer be alive. Numerous affiliates of Jeffrey Epstein and Jeffrey Epstein himself are no longer alive. The fact that Ghislaine Maxwell still is alive calls into question what kind of testimony she will offer now that the Trump administration is looking to offer her leniency in exchange for some kind of reliable narrative that will most likely absolve Trump and all these other financial elites from any sort of wrongdoing.
In Corrigan's memory. Epstein was a consultant at Towers Financial. I met him there and I drafted a consulting agreement as I was an attorney at the company. I remember him. Epstein was even mentioned in a lawsuit against the company filed by the Illinois Department of Insurance, who, now you're probably wondering, why was Illinois involved? Well, they claimed Towers had carried out an illegal transfer that violated Illinois law. As you can see here, Epstein's name appears in their documents multiple times, yet for whatever reason, Epstein never once appeared as a defendant in the 1993 federal case against Hoffenberg. Although Hoffenberg's testimony to the grand jury included mention of Epstein being the mastermind behind the whole thing, as reported by Julie K. Brown, Epstein was nonetheless dropped from the case for reasons that are still unknown today.
Also, if there's people also say, oh, well, what about if Ghislaine Maxwell has a dead man switch and that's why she hasn't been killed? I think if there was someone who was most likely had a dead man switch, it would be Jeffrey Epstein. So the fact that no information has been uncovered since his untimely demise, I suspect that the real reason why Ghislaine Maxwell is alive and kicking is because people know that she is reliable and won't tell the truth. What's a dead man switch? Come on, guys. A dead man switch. Like when you die, it's like timed. It's like timed release of information, compromising information. Oftentimes, it's not a literal switch that you hit when you're dying, but instead, it's something that you have to consistently log into to show that you are alive. It's either a third party that would reveal information, or like if you want to leave matters into your own hands, like most likely something that you would have to routinely check in to make sure that it doesn't actually reveal information. It's not like literally a switch. It's just like a protocol. Here's why Ghislaine Maxwell was charged with perjury. One of the claims that she was not aware that Epstein had sex with anyone else, which she repeated when asked again. Maxwell was charged with perjury based on an answer she gave in a 2016 deposition regarding Epstein's alleged abuse and her own complicity. The indictment against her cited multiple comments she made denying any knowledge of Epstein's alleged abuse. When asked if Epstein had a scheme to recruit underage girls for sexual massages, she responded, "I don't know what you're talking about," for instance. And she said she was not aware of anybody that I interacted with at Epstein's properties being underage other than a plaintiff involved in a civil lawsuit. Maxwell also testified under oath she was not aware of any sex toys or devices being used at Epstein's properties, and that she had never personally given Epstein or any of his victims a massage, which is interesting to say because there's literal photographic evidence for, one, the toys in all of Jeffrey Epstein's properties, including Ghislaine Maxwell giving a massage to Jeffrey Epstein. On the plane, the image lives in my mind. A foot massage specifically. She also claims she was unaware of Epstein engaging in sexual activities with anyone besides herself and two women she and Epstein had a three-way sexual activities with, saying in her deposition, "I wasn't aware that he was having sexual activities with anyone when I was visiting him other than myself." When asked again by attorneys to confirm that her testimony was that she was not aware of Epstein having any other sexual partners, Maxwell doubled down, saying that that is my testimony. That is correct. Her statements conflict with charges in the indictment that Maxwell was later convicted on, which alleged Maxwell conducted massages and was present for and participated in the minor victims, among other allegations. Maxwell got the perjury charges severed, which would require a separate trial. DOJ eventually dropped the charges to avoid re-traumatizing the victims. I think it's also awfully suspicious that Ghislaine Maxwell has not been further scrutinized for her involvement beyond the charges that she took and is serving a prison sentence over. That's another thing. Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney, David Oscar Marcus, on her meeting with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, looking forward to another productive day. Ghislaine honestly answered every question that Mr. Blanche asked, and she will continue to do so. We are grateful that the government is trying to uncover the truth. They have never before spoken with her, so we trust the process. Apparently, she had boxes and boxes of material. This is video of Maxwell returning to prison after meeting with Trump's Deputy Attorney General, and you can see her there carrying a box of material.
Meeting with Trump's Deputy Attorney General, and you can see her there. Actually, if you look closely,
I just don't trust this admin at all, especially after the way that Donald Trump has talked about this issue, especially the way that Donald Trump has talked about Ghislaine Maxwell specifically. I just do not trust them at all. Why the does she have a box of materials? Why is she not immediately deposed, for example? Why is she having closed-door meetings with Trump's lawyer?
she's carrying a box of material. Now, Maxwell's attorney says she was forthcoming with every question that Trump's team threw at her today. This is video of Maxwell returning to prison just moments after meeting with.
I think they're coaching her. I think her testimony is going to be entirely fabricated. And given that we don't have access to the actual information that was uncovered during the trial, a lot of the information that was redacted, we have no way of knowing. The public has no way of matching her testimony to the information that was discovered in the trial that was heavily redacted. Also in the trial. Even if she were to turn around and be like, oh, well, Trump was certainly infallible here. I mean, he was morally uncorruptible. He's never been around young women ever, especially given that she is an unreliable narrator to begin with. She committed perjury before in depositions. It's obvious to me that they're going to present Ghislaine Maxwell as like an exit ramp to try and shut this conversation down. And then the dumbest propagandists for the administration will consistently point to her to be like, what, you don't trust her? Wait, was Maxwell convicted by a jury or a judge? Any brave jurors that can call her BS out? No, because, guys, the investigation that was conducted into Ghislaine Maxwell's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein's sex crimes obviously had a very limited scope. So there is evidence out there. It's just all of that evidence is heavily redacted in the process of the trial. So I don't think there's that many people outside of like the people that were committed to the investigation that know the extent of the involvement of others. In a situation like this, there is a finite amount of people that you can have involved. Because the moment that you have 10 people, 20 people, 30 people, now you have all of their immediate family members and other people that you could leak these secrets to. It all of a sudden becomes a much more difficult, it becomes too difficult to keep a secret. Like the moon landing. People say it's a conspiracy. It's literally impossible for the moon landing to have been staged, given the number of people that would have had to participate in the production. It would be literally impossible. So in this investigation, like there's a court trial, there's a court process, but all of the information that the jury saw, all the information that like even my friends that were in that courtroom writing about the process in and of itself, like they had very limited information. All of that information is basically public knowledge at this point. Here is Ghislaine Maxwell. Prince Andrew picture where Virginia Giuffre is fake.
I don't believe it's real for a second. In fact, I'm sure it's not. There's never been an original. And further, there's no photograph, right? And I've only ever seen a photocopy of it. I don't believe it happened. And it's certainly the way as described would have been impossible. I don't have it.
So I think that should give you a little bit of insight into how she is most likely going to operate. Do you see what I'm saying?
Any memory of going to tramp? Certainly not an outfit that I would have worn.
I like that her personal anecdote about why this is most likely fake is the same as Prince Andrew. I would never wear that. That's not my pedophilia outfit. Both British, by the way. That's literally what Prince Andrew said. That's what Prince Andrew said. Prince Andrew, about that photo, was like, well, this is not real. This is not my pedophilia outfit. And I, of course, can't sweat. I physically cannot sweat due to a grave injury that I got in the Falklands. It could not have been me. Without gaining access to all of the evidence that was unearthed through the investigation, which there is also a limitation to like how much they uncovered and how much they followed through on the financial entanglements of Jeffrey Epstein and many of his affiliates. I suspect that they didn't, like, I suspect that whoever was conducting this investigation didn't follow it too closely, right? There's a certain point where you stop, especially if this is an intelligence asset. There's evidence out there that is heavily redacted, so there is nothing to match her testimony against either. So this will be kept within the limited confines of what we already know. Because this court process took place already, she's already convicted and behind bars. Do you see what I mean? At that point, her firsthand testimony, because it's not a real deposition, has nothing to match up against.
While Hoffenberg was awaiting a jail sentence, Epstein was busy frolicking around the White House and schmoozing power brokers at dinners and events like the White House Historical Association fundraiser in 1993, which included such beautiful guests as Clark Clifford, a man responsible for establishing BCCI in the United States. BCCI, which we definitely don't have enough time to dive into here, was an international bank used to transfer dark money between international governments later found to be involved in a litany of shady activity ranging from money laundering to illegal weapons sales to human trafficking. Clifford himself had charges brought against him that would be dropped not because prosecutors thought he was innocent all of a sudden, but because of Clifford's poor health the same year that he attended this fundraiser with Epstein. Frankly, the idea that a man accused of helping to facilitate one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in American history could avoid prosecution and immediately pal around with some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in the country at an exclusive White House fundraiser is enough to turn anyone into a conspiracy theorist. Other than that 2003 Vanity Fair puff piece and a glowing profile in New York Magazine that we will get to in a bit, Epstein had lived much of his life in the shadows since the early 80s, making it all the more tricky for investigators and journalists to track his elusive movements. A lot of the insight we now know is thanks to Miami Herald journalist Julie K. Brown, who presents an extremely comprehensive timeline of events in her excellent book Perversion of Justice, which I read in preparation for this video and would recommend to anyone looking to learn more about the Epstein story. Brown, who has covered the story extensively for years now, writes that the earliest instances of Epstein's sex crimes
I do have the BCCI hat from Chapo. I wear it from time to time.
Against minors date back to the mid-90s, when, at a Michigan summer camp in 1994, he and his then-girlfriend Ghislaine approached a 13-year-old child. According to the Daily Mail article Brown cites here, the anonymous girl's mother says she looked even younger than she was. Then, years later, when Ghislaine's trial was underway in 2021, one of the lawyers representing the now convicted trafficker wrote this young victim's story off as the result of her own conduct, and that the girl had voluntarily or negligently assumed a known risk, consenting to the abuse. A 13-year-old.
Dude, defense attorneys are such nasty little freaks. I mean, straight up. That's what you gotta do if you're defending a pedophile, an internationally known criminal pedophile. If that is your client, this is the type of you do. Isn't that insane?
That is what lawyers representing Epstein and Ghislaine have consistently thought of the hundreds of girls who were systematically trafficked throughout their childhood. So just keep that in mind as we move forward here and discuss Epstein's track record of abuse across the United States. Some of it taking place in New York, some at his New Mexico baby farm, as he called it, and of course a lot of it occurring at the Palm Beach mansion he bought in 1990. To understand Epstein's years-long pattern of abuse, we have to establish the location of this 14,000 square foot monstrosity. Unfortunately, the neighborhood that housed Epstein's $44 million oceanfront property was only a short drive away from a much less privileged area of Palm Beach, Florida. Testimony from even more victims prove he explicitly sought out girls from broken families, girls who were either homeless or on the verge of homelessness, those who came from tragic backgrounds wrought by addiction, suicide, and abuse already. Girls who lived in trailer homes and were in and out of foster homes. Girls who Epstein knew would not be taken seriously by the legal system. A prediction that his infamous plea agreement years later would ultimately prove right. And just a fair warning, a lot of this video from here on out will be discussing what victims experienced at the hands of Epstein and his associates. So if that's something you're unable to listen to, I completely understand, and just wanted to make it very clear before we get into any of the details. Throughout the mid-90s to the early noughts, Epstein would employ several tactics to prey on girls who primarily attended Palm Beach Gardens High School, Lake Worth Middle School, and Royal Palm Beach High, which the Palm Beach Post named Ground Zero in Epstein's operation. One of those girls was Michelle Licata, who was just 16 years old when she was approached by a friend at school in the days leading up to Christmas, 2004. Michelle, who recalled to ABC working at a supermarket and being strapped for cash at the time, was looking to earn some money in order to buy her family gifts for the holidays. According to her friend, all Michelle needed to do was massage an old guy and she'd get $200. This made Michelle curious, and because she was led to believe the massage would take place in a professional environment similar to the spas she had seen in the past, she obliged. It was only on the drive there that Michelle realized they weren't going to a professional facility. They were going to a house. And after finally arriving outside a sprawling mansion in a neighborhood she had never seen before, her friend hastily remarked that the man who lived inside might ask her to undress during the massage. Before she knew it, Michelle was whisked inside and led upstairs by several other women she had never met to a cold, dark bathroom where she was forced to encounter Jeffrey Epstein, lying face down on the massage table, talking on the phone. In that moment, Michelle was lost, confused, and left all alone with a man old enough to be her father. She then goes on to recount how Epstein her, noting that his face was enough to terrify her for the rest of her life. After the incident was over, Epstein paid her $200 and asked her to deliver another $100 bill to the friend who had brought her there. She got back in the car and told her friend what had happened, to which the friend responded, "Oh, that's okay. He tried to do that with my other friend too," as Michelle told Brown. Interestingly though, as Michelle told ABC, there were in fact other adults present at the estate. Gardeners, butlers, housekeepers, etc. It's just that they did nothing, as if they were used to seeing such girls come and go all the time. And as everyone knows now, that was the case. He did this frequently.
When Palm Beach police began interviewing teenagers in 2005, they were astonished at what dozens told them about Jeffrey Epstein.
Every girl that meets Jeffrey starts off with giving him a massage. The more you do with him, the more you make. Basically, if you take off your clothes, you're gonna make more. If you let him do things to you, you're gonna make more. I did it naked, but I wouldn't let him touch me or anything like that. So after that, he's like, you know what? He's like, listen, I'll pay you $200 for every girl that you bring to me.
She's like, oh, do you need to make any extra money? I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, I can give you, like $200. It's this older guy in Palm Beach. He gets a lot of massages from girls. That was really, that's all she told me. He asked me to take my shirt off, so I took my shirt off, and that's how that was it.
Did you ever take your panties off and be completely nude?
Every now and then, yeah.
It's like a train. It's like I introduce them to all my friends, she'll bring her friends, and then will bring her friends. It goes on and on.
Having underage girls come to his house to abuse was like a constant need for him, which unfortunately drastically impacted the trajectory of these young girls' lives. One victim by the name of Carolyn, who was abused by Epstein starting in 2001, testified in court that she had become addicted to pain pills and cocaine in an effort to block out the abuse she endured at 14 years old. She claimed to have visited Epstein upwards of 100 times growing up, and that she was at his Palm Beach residence multiple times a week for years. Carolyn tragically passed away of a and methadone overdose in October 2023. Although police were able to identify a little over 30 victims in 2015, Julie Kate Brown later discovered through her own research around 80 girls abused by Epstein just in Palm Beach alone. And those are only the ones we know about. Considering the wealth and the powerful connections Epstein would use as leverage over his young victims, it's no surprise that these girls were reluctant to speak with anyone about what had happened to them. Some, like Michelle, didn't even tell her parents until the police came knocking at her door a year later. Even now, there are victims who understandably don't want their identities out there. One anonymous woman in particular outlined these feelings to ABC in 2019. "I almost felt scared to talk. Like, was I going to get in trouble? Did I do something wrong that I could be arrested? I was young. I had blamed myself for all these years. I was definitely scared to talk." But that's not to say some girls hadn't been talking from the beginning.
Farmer says she reported the assault to the FBI, but she told us it wasn't for another decade, just before Epstein's first arrest in 2006, that an agent finally appeared at her door.
Remember Maria Farmer, who I mentioned earlier, how she told police that Epstein assaulted her in Ohio? Well, unfortunately, that wasn't a lone incident. That same year, her 16-year-old sister, Annie Farmer, was also by Epstein and his then-girlfriend Ghislaine at their New Mexico ranch, with Annie writing in her diary at the time of how weird it was that Epstein had rubbed her hand and lower leg at a movie theater, before later being instructed by Ghislaine Maxwell to give Epstein a foot massage, with Ghislaine later touching the 16-year-old inappropriately in front of Epstein. Epstein also got into bed with Annie at one point during the trip. Maria's experience in Ohio was similar, with the couple essentially trapping her in the house and groping her in unison, mirroring each other's movements, as the New York Times put it. Maria claimed in an affidavit that Les Wexner security staff essentially kept her there against her wishes for 12 hours after the assault took place. It was at this point that Maria and Annie realized what had happened to one another and tried to take action. Both sisters reported their experiences first to police, then to FBI, who did nothing, prompting the sisters to instead speak with Vanity Fair journalist Vicky Ward on the record in 2002. Being tasked with writing the now infamous profile The Talented Mr. Epstein for the magazine, you would think that Ward would obviously publish.
It's a really weird it's a really weird situation, because like on the one hand you're like, well, that's odd that they didn't do anything. On the other hand, when you look at like these sorts of incidents, like whether it be domestic violence or whether it be sexual assault, cops, not even the FBI, but cops are notoriously bad at dealing with this stuff. The FBI, on the other hand, is supposed to be a little bit better at dealing with this stuff, especially considering that he's been dinged before. That's part of the reason why it's like, I don't know, was this incompetence or was it deliberate?
The allegations and expose Epstein and Ghislaine once and for all. Only somehow that didn't happen. Sure, the article did briefly reference Epstein's affinity for, quote, mostly young girls, among a sea of other breathtaking quotes used to humanize the man, such as, quote, Epstein is charming, and, quote, many people comment there is something innocent, almost childlike about Jeffrey Epstein. Making sure to hammer home the generous $25 million donation he had just made to Harvard for the creation of a mathematical biology and evolutionary dynamics program in Epstein's name. The article made zero mention of the allegations Ward had been told by the Farmer sisters. Since the release of this article, the blame for this little blunder has been pointed at numerous parties. Ward blames Vanity Fair's then editor-in-chief, Graydon Carter, for succumbing to Epstein's intimidation tactics and not including the allegations out of a combined lack of sympathy for the victims and that he actually believed Epstein's story over theirs. While Carter has referred to Ward as a serial liar, Isaac Chotiner offered an extensive analysis of the claims made on both sides in his article last year for The New Yorker. I would highly recommend checking it out in full, along with Ward's two responses, to get the full story of what happened, but it ultimately boils down to a massive he said, she said. It's true that Carter does have a reputation of repressing stories in the past, and seems pretty biased toward Epstein, according to transcripts released by Ward, but it should also be noted that Ward herself went on to write two more controversial pieces on Epstein. One in 2011 that praises Ghislaine pretty heavily, and another in 2008 where she describes Epstein as, quote, perfectly charming, as he has been to me for years now, telling him over the phone, well, I guess you and I have a history by now, huh, Jeffrey? To which he responded, you know how many girls say that to me?
Brother. I mean, come on. God damn, dude. Oh.
In fact, Maria Farmer herself alleges it was Vicky Ward who ratted to Ghislaine about the sisters going to the FBI.
Before all that, I was already in hiding because of Vanity Fair. Vicky Ward is, I'm going to tell you right now, she's a monster. She's a true monster. She's not a hero. We had to send a cease and desist letter because she's harassed my family for so long to try to save her face because she told Ghislaine Maxwell over drinks that I reported them to the FBI. Can you believe that?
Holy shit.
And so
Oh, sorry, I didn't
this
mean
was
to
in
swear.
2002.
But wow.
In 2000, no, please, I cursed my head off. She, for a year, promised us our safety. For a whole year. And see, I didn't meet with Graydon. I met with Vicky. And so Vicky's the one that's responsible here because she was the person who promised us our safety. And she promised us that she would protect the...
The person that she's talking to is Whitney Webb, who famously wrote the book One Nation Under Blackmail. I think there's 2 volumes, but One Nation Under Blackmail, which heavily talks about Epstein as well as like a serial blackmailer too.
Story, right? Since then, she calls and threatens, I own your story. I can write your story if I mean, she's a real piece of work.
Many of us have long suspected that Vicky Ward is a highly suspicious player in the Jeffrey Epstein saga. Now, thanks to Whitney Webb's interview with Maria Farmer, we know for sure that Ward was protecting Epstein, Ghislaine, and her cohorts. Given all of Daily Beast's coverage of the Epstein scandal, this is pretty interesting. Ghislaine Maxwell at a 2008 party with the Daily Beast founder Tina Brown's home, co-hosted by Vicky Ward, the journalist who wrote about how she tried to warn us about Epstein in 2003 for the Daily Beast. I discussed Ward and many other Epstein protectors in the media, such as John Connolly, who seems to have played as similar a role as Ward last year with the great Porkins policy, who has been on the Epstein beat before practically anyone. This is just one of the revelations contained in Maria Farmer's statements. So much more in this hugely important interview. This is from all the way back from 2020. Yeah. One Nation Under Blackmail also talks about Roy Cohn, the original Epstein, and also Trump's mentor, Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn apparently was like heavily featured and talked about as Trump's mentor in the Trump movie that came out, which didn't really make a lot of waves for some reason. What was the movie called? I kind of want to watch that because Adam told me it was really good. The Apprentice. Yeah, Vicky Ward still gets play in the media as like someone who uncovered the scandals of Epstein.
This story.
For the record, it became a nightmare. Normal people don't behave like this. Journalist Vicky Ward on why she was terrified. Investigative journalist and New York Times bestselling author on why she was terrified of Jeffrey Epstein over threats he made against her children. I said, what's the name of the movie? This person said Baki the Grappler, I believe. Yeah, I don't think it's called Baki the Grappler. Thank you, though. It's Baki the Grappler, great series. Probably not about Donald Trump. Although Donald Trump is in Baki the Grappler in the manga later down the line as the president. Great anime overall. Do you know what Baki is even about? Yes. I will not be mentioning what his involvement in Baki the Grappler is. Trump's mention in Baki. What it looks like. Let's continue.
Vanity Fair had a responsibility to do right by Epstein's accusers then and provide a voice for the voiceless in 2003. But because they didn't, Epstein was able to continue his pattern of abusing girls for years. One thing I can assure you, though, is that this wasn't the last time Epstein's accusers would be given the cold shoulder by the media. In 2019, shortly after Epstein's death, a leaked video would make the rounds online depicting ABC journalist Amy Robach expressing disdain for the network quashing an exclusive interview she conducted with Epstein victim Virginia Giuffre years before the sex trafficker was ever arrested on federal charges. On a hot...
See, like, once again, just like with the police, were they actually incompetent because they're historically incompetent when it comes to victims? Or were they complicit and they knew what was going on because he was a federal asset? Same goes for the media. Were they actually protecting Jeffrey Epstein because he's an asset? Or are they actually protecting Jeffrey Epstein because he's a rich guy who's very powerful and very connected? Because the media does both. It could be both. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mike, Amy can be seen here telling her off-screen producers during a commercial break that she had the story 3 years ago, and that the network offered a myriad of excuses as to why they wouldn't air Virginia's story back in 2015.
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will that also quashed the story. And then Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in it because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton. We had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on, to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now. Like, every day I get more and more pissed because I'm just like, oh my God, what we had was unreal. Other women backing it up. Hey, yep. Brad Edwards, the attorney, 3 years ago, saying there will come a day when we will realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile this country has ever known. And I had it all 3 years ago.
A big factor here seemed to be Queen Elizabeth's son, Prince Andrew, whose name you likely associate with Jeffrey Epstein already. It's true the two have been photographed together on numerous occasions. He did say in a hugely infamous interview after Epstein's final arrest that he weirdly did not regret his friendship with the sex trafficker, which is an insane thing to say, before stepping back from his royal duties in the wake of some pretty understandable outrage. Amy, though, says that it was partly the royal family who applied pressure on the news outlet after learning what Virginia's allegations were. As subsequent court documents reveal, Virginia stated under oath that Epstein and Ghislaine began trafficking her in 2000 when she was still a teenager, and that she was instructed by the pair to have sex with Andrew on 3 separate occasions in New York, London, and on Little St. James Island in 2001, claiming she was paid $15,000 in at least one of these instances. Somehow, as Business Insider recently reported, this allegation was not considered pertinent by the judge in this defamation case Virginia had brought against Epstein and Ghislaine. Despite this, widely circulated photos showing a 17-year-old Virginia standing next to Prince Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell just hours before one of the assaults, according to Virginia. But because ABC chose not to air any of this in 2015, these claims were not made public until 2019, to which Buckingham Palace immediately denied just before Prince Andrew made probably one of the biggest PR mistakes I've ever seen in my entire life. This utterly
that interview lives in my mind. There's so many different aspects of this, but like that interview was what a spectacular that was for the royal family. It was so bad that they literally dropped him. The Queen disowned him, dude. That's where that famous I'm incapable of sweating because of a grave injury that I incurred in the Falklands War comes from. Or that's not the type of shirt I would have worn on a night like this. Like, Mr. I don't have my, that's not my Ophelia shirt. Incredible.
View that has gone on to haunt Prince Andrew ever since was conducted by the BBC in November 2019.
This is my reaction to
by
it.
his communications secretary, Jason Stein, who notably quit his job immediately after this thing aired, which says enough right there. If anyone was on the fence about Andrew's guilt going into this thing, they certainly weren't anymore.
Actually, it's a very good opportunity, and I'm delighted to be able to see you today.
Oh man, I'm sure you are.
As you say, all of this goes back to your friendship with Jeffrey Epstein.
It would be a considerable stretch to say that he was a very, very close friend.
About 6 minutes in, we learned that despite visiting Epstein's Palm Beach mansion, flying on the Lolita Express, staying at his New York estate, and taking a trip to his private island, Andrew, who was serving on Britain's Full Stop campaign aimed to stamp out child trafficking, ironically, has never once seen any indication of what the financier was really up to. But things only start to get worse when the interviewer asks about Epstein's 2006 indictment, which is also the same year that Andrew invited Epstein out to his daughter's 18th birthday party across the pond. But even—
Who dat? Oh, would you look at that? Shocking that Harvey Weinstein is right there. Oh no, I'm not talking to you. Austin just walked in.
But even if Andrew was somehow not aware of any investigation by the time he sent that invitation, if he were truly innocent like he claims, he would have officially cut all communication in 2006, you'd think, right? I mean, after the indictment, he's no more talking to the pedophile, right? And that's something he says he maintained until 2010.
Wait. These photos are so crazy because it's like, what's that? Who's that in the background? Oh, that's right. The mother president and his wife. Every photo, dude. It's like, you know what's crazy? It's basically like Hunter Biden and his affinity for doing crack. He has to take a photo every time he does crack and wave his gun around. Donald Trump seemingly had to be in every photo with Jeffrey Epstein. Anytime this photographed at a party, Donald Trump is right there, dude. Right there.
You'd think, right? I mean, after the indictment, he's no more talking to the pedophile, right? And that's something he says he maintained until 2010. Keyword there, until 2010.
Well, I ceased contact with him after I was aware that he was under investigation. And that was later on in 2006. And I wasn't in touch with him again until 2010. So I just.
This is why I don't understand the point of this interview. You are admitting to millions of people that you knowingly hung out with a convicted pedophile.
I still don't know why he did this interview. Like, I don't know why he thought this was a good idea. Why did he say any of these things in the interview? None of it makes sense. Like, was it the royal family that was like, you have to do this to like clear your name? But in that case, like, it's much better to just like ship him off to like, I don't know, another island that's far away. You're a royal. You don't have to answer to any of these things. I'm glad he did.
4 years after you say you cut him off. What, did you just change your mind? You were against in 2006, but you got a change of heart in 2010, and we're supposed to think you're innocent?
By December of 2010, you went to stay with him at his New York mansion. Why? Why were you staying with a convicted sex offender?
Right. Now, I went there with the sole purpose of saying to him that because he had been convicted, it was inappropriate for us to be seen together.
Ah, well, that plan really worked out, huh? You were literally photographed with him on that trip.
I felt that doing it over the telephone was the chicken's way of doing it. I had to go and see him and talk to him.
Yeah, man, we wouldn't want to disrespect the convicted pedophile, would we?
And we had an opportunity to go for a walk in the park, and that was the conversation, coincidentally, that was photographed, which was when I said to him, I said, look, because of what has happened, I don't think it is appropriate that we should remain in contact.
Prince Andrew.
Royals, man, they have a way with following protocol. Yes, you see, as a royalty, it would be dastardly to not tell my former best friend that I could no longer establish contact aside from going to his house and doing a little bit of feeler for good old time's sake. You see, you have to do it. One last job, if you will. Ha ha ha.
Thinks you are stupid enough to believe that someone just happened to snap a picture of him during the exact moment he was telling Epstein, hey man, you're a pedophile, we can't hang out anymore. Now, does anyone on the face of the earth believe that? You let him throw you a party with all those guests I mentioned earlier.
We decided that we would part company, and I left, I think it was the next day.
Yep, just had to get one more night in at the pedo palace, huh?
He didn't go into any great depth in the conversation about what I was doing, or what he was doing.
Very, very unfortunate Freudian slip there.
Who advised you then that it was a good idea to go and break up the friendship? Did that come from the palace? Was Her Majesty the Queen involved?
No.
You can tell he's extremely careful in this interview not to implicate the rest of his, well, slightly important family. Almost like he knows he massively messed up and probably did some heinous things behind closed doors, which again begs the question, why did he agree to this interview? I mean, don't get me wrong, I love it. I wish everyone involved with Epstein did an interview like this. I keep going, Andrew, this is great.
He threw a party to celebrate his release, and you were invited as the guest of honor.
Oh, it was a small dinner party. There were only 8 or 10 of us, I think, at the dinner. If there was a party, then I'd know nothing about that.
You were invited to that dinner as a guest of honor.
Well, I was there, so there was a dinner. I don't think it was quite as you might put it, but yeah, okay, I was there at a dinner, yeah.
Okay, let's say it was a dinner, okay? You moron. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many people came. You were still...
That's the most innocent man, dude. That's the most innocent man on the planet, okay? What do you mean? What do you mean? It was just a dinner party. I was there. I was dining. What do you expect me to do? I was famished.
Having a ball, yucking it up with your friends, the sex traffickers.
You said you went to break up the relationship, and yet you stayed at that New York mansion several days. I'm wondering how long...
But I was doing a number of other things while I was there.
But you were staying at the house of a convicted sex offender.
It was a convenient place to stay.
Oh, man, I love...
I'm reliving the experience, the mind-melting experience I had when I first watched this live, okay? If you want to see my reaction, the Honorable Prince Andrew, it's back in November 21st, 2019. It's right here for those of you to watch if you would like to. Wait, what is this?
Like, he's like the Justin Trudeau of, you know what? That last fire. I wonder if the little girl that last time too, which wasn't even the last time they saw each other. You know what I mean? Like, I think this guy is just addicted. Like, he's like the Justin Trudeau of little girls. You know how like Justin Trudeau can't stop doing blackface? Like, I feel like he just can't stop fucking underage girls. You know what I mean? Like, what other reason should there be to ever meet Jeffrey Epstein? Unless he is an intelligence asset directly tied to like either the CIA or even Israel, which is not even a unique proposition or an anti-Semitic conspiracy, considering Ehud Barak was pictured coming out of his house like last year.
This is why it's so funny when people are like, Hasan, you've changed. Hasan, you've changed. It's like, I have literally been saying the same things. I feel like I'm losing. I must be a little crazy because my commentary is the same. The things that I'm saying are the same. I had the broccoli cut before it became hot, down to the goddamn broccoli cut. The only difference is I'm in a 1-bedroom apartment here, and the microphone is ass. It's the same microphone, but like the sound. Okay, wait, hold on. You were skinnier here too? No, I wasn't skinnier then.
Okay. Anyway,
you don't love the spirit of justice.
Why else would
your voice definitely changed? No, my voice didn't change. The microphone, the audio balance changed a little bit. That's it.
Fucking Prime Minister of Israel, the ex-Prime Minister of Israel, leave the house of a convicted international trafficker. Who knows?
She described dancing with you and you profusely sweating.
You don't
and
love
that she
the
went
spirit
on to
of
have
justice.
Bath,
You love
possibly
your father.
Oh, this is the big one.
With the sweating, because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat.
You don't love the spirit of justice.
Wait.
You love your father.
Wait. I thought this was a meme, dude. When Will explained this to me, I was like, oh, that must be a joke. Like, he's like, Will is joking. My man didn't just say, I was unable to sweat at that moment in time. No. He didn't say I don't sweat, because he's obviously sweating. He's sweating right now. So it's insane for him to say I don't sweat. I have a medical condition. He straight up said I couldn't sweat at that time. Yeah, he didn't sweat. He got cured. Oh, thank God. Thank the Jesus. Thank the Lord. All of our prayers have been answered. He wasn't able to sweat, but now he can. I have never seen such bad defense. Never do an interview, dude. You are a part of the royal family. Why would you
God, even I said the same thing that I literally said the same take. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, let's just keep going.
Just gives up at a certain point. Like, you knew she was going to ask these questions. Why are you shocked that you're having to answer for your behavior? I mean, he is only a little entitled, I guess. The guy did grow up in a literal castle.
At the time, I felt it was the honourable and right thing to do. My judgment was probably coloured by my tendency to be too honourable.
You heard it here first, everybody. The honorable thing to do is meet with a guy you know is a pedophile in person to tell him you can't be friends anymore over the course of a 4-day dinner party extravaganza. I mean, I just can't wrap my mind around this.
So why wouldn't you announce this breakup when you got back? Why wouldn't you publicly explain what you'd done?
Oh, that's a great question. And the answer is because he's lying. He didn't take that trip to break up with him or whatever. That's an excuse he came up with from the looks of it 30 minutes before this interview. But, you know, that's just my guess.
One of Epstein's accusers, Virginia Roberts, has made allegations against you. She says she met you in 2001. She says she dined with you, danced with you at Tramp nightclub in London. She went on to have sex with you in a house in Belgravia belonging to Ghislaine Maxwell, your friend. Your response?
I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady.
She described dancing with you and you profusely sweating.
I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time, and that was, yes, I didn't sweat at the time, and it's only because I have done a number of things in the recent past that I'm starting to be able to do that again. So I'm afraid to say that there's a medical condition that says that I didn't do it, so therefore.
So in the midst of very shamelessly lying about his sweating habits,
One of the worst statements. It is up there. It is an all-time great. Okay, I don't sweat. Well, I can sweat now. I'm sweating at the moment, but I couldn't sweat back then. It's a peculiar medical condition.
goes on to rattle off a detailed alibi for himself on the specific evening that Virginia says the assault took place. And that's before he goes on to say that, well, he might have met Virginia. And yes, in fact, he has seen the photograph of the two of them together, but strangely, he's unable to offer a convenient excuse for why such a photo exists. Other than, hey, maybe it's fake, right? And mind you, this was before the days of Midjourney and Dolly, so if there's anyone out there who genuinely thinks this is the result of some master Photoshop work, I'd love to meet them, shake their hand, and ask them to get their eyes checked.
You think it is you next to her?
Well, Ghislaine Maxwell, another person who has, as recently as 2 years ago or last year, new Wall Street Journal leak. Wait, what's the leak?
A photo.
Would they leak now?
Well, it's definitely me. I mean, that's a picture of me. It's not a picture of. I don't believe it's a picture of me in London, because when I go out in London, I wear
this one.
a suit and a tie.
Oh yeah, here's a photo of him in London without a suit and tie, by the way. He even looks like he's sweating a bit. If the first half of this interview was bad, the second half is almost unwatchable. He's stuttering all over the place, desperately in search for the right excuses, while knowing deep down there is no way he could sell this thing. He's struggling to remember even the most basic details of the defense his team no doubt coached him to say.
When was your last contact with her?
It was earlier this year, funny enough, in the summer.
So even though he had by then been arrested and was facing charges of sex trafficking?
No. This was early spring, I think. It was long, because when was he arrested?
July.
No, it was before July.
And that was the last time?
Yeah. Because
Did you discuss Epstein at all then?
No, actually, funnily enough, no, not at all.
It's just an awesome way to end it. So when did you see Ghislaine? This summer, after Epstein got caught? When was that? July? Oh yeah, that was way before that. Long time before that, I can promise you. Now, I'm sure you already knew, at the very least, that this interview existed. I mean, it's one of the most infamous pieces of television as far as I'm concerned. But what you may not know is that in response to Andrew's claims, Virginia spoke out in her own interview with the BBC the following month. In it, she recalls in vivid detail the traumatizing encounter with the prince, and that all she could remember at the time was that she had just been abused by a member of the royal family. These powerful people were my chains, adding, he knows what happened, I know what happened. There's only one of us telling the truth, and I know it's me. Over the following years, Virginia would file a lawsuit against Andrew specifically, accusing the prince of assault, leading Andrew to hire the same lawyer who went on to work with none other than Colleen Bollinger just last year. But by February 2022, Andrew was forced to pay Virginia an out-of-court settlement, possibly, reportedly, financed in part by the Queen of England herself, who is also said to have contributed millions to her son's civil suit against Virginia, according to the Daily Telegraph. But Virginia's story doesn't end with Prince Andrew. In fact, an entire handful of Epstein's buddies were also implicated in the death deposition released in 2019, along with a 139-page memoir written by Virginia, linked in the description below in full. If you take the time to read through all of it, you'll be presented with a first-person account of life inside Epstein's trafficking ring, and how she was first approached by Ghislaine Maxwell as a teenager, assisting her dad over the summer at Mar-a-Lago. With her hopes set on one day becoming a massage therapist, Virginia worked near the spa and would often read books on anatomy when business was slow. Virginia describes her first encounter with Ghislaine as follows: a lovely-looking woman in her late 30s who spoke with a proper English accent approached me. I assumed it was a general question like, "Where's the ladies' room?" and "Was that a fancy model?"
Oh yeah, Virginia Giuffre was I don't know what the proper term is, like coerced at Mar-a-Lago. She was groomed at Mar-a-Lago.
But she was more interested in the book I was reading, only believing at first that we were just making small talk.
I didn't want to say recruited because I feel like there's an element of like consent in recruited. It doesn't sound right to say recruited.
She was really intrigued by my choice of reading. She then asked if I do massages on the side, and I...
Seduce sounds even worse. What do you mean seduce? She was like 14, bro. What the That's even crazier than recruited. That's why I say coerced or groomed.
I stated I was only reading the book and had not yet begun to study, but one day I would love to practice massage therapy. It wasn't long after that Ghislaine would mention this rich guy who happened to be looking for a massage therapist, turning her down at first on account of her own inexperience in the field. Virginia eventually ended up accepting Ghislaine's contact information and couldn't wait to tell her dad the good news. We both thought this could be a wonderful opportunity to get my accreditation in massage therapy, she wrote. Seeing that it was a lady in her late 30s who came off as more of a nurturer rather than a procurer, neither of us saw any reason to be hesitant, which I think perfectly encapsulates the way Epstein and Ghislaine would weaponize these girls' personal aspirations against them. They knew exactly how to manipulate the desires and interests of their victims to extract what they wanted. What started off as this exciting chance to pursue her dreams turned into one of the darkest periods in...
Talk about ICE raids. This is so unimportant. I feel like the federal law enforcement agencies have changed techniques. Now they've changed techniques where they're now talking about like actually important things to shift the attention away. It's like, bro, stop. This story is so unimportant, dude. Please stop. Talk about Gaza, please. It's like spent the last 6 hours talking about it, and it's like, no, just dude, come on.
Virginia's life.
But
boring.
It was supposed to be, a massage therapy. And I thought, wow, that might be a good job to learn. And when I met him, he was just in jeans in front of his mansion and just seemed like a regular guy. I had no idea what was going on.
Virginia describes in vivid detail her first encounter with Epstein, along with her second, her third, her fourth, and so on. Before long, Virginia realized she had become one of Epstein's favorite, quote, new little toys, as she put it in her memoir, and went on to accompany him on frequent excursions all across the world. It was during her 2 years of being trafficked that Virginia claims she was forced to have sex not only with Epstein and Prince Andrew, which on one occasion involved the prince using a puppet lookalike of himself to grope another victim while he touched Virginia with his other hand, but also named a slew of other powerful clients. The list included a Harvard professor named Stephen, another prince whose name she couldn't recall, a Nobel Prize-winning scientist, and an owner of a hotel chain who she described as a short, balding man with straggling remnants of curly brown hair. This owner, she claims, offered to pay her triple to work for him instead of Epstein. It's important to note here that Virginia was also being given high doses of Xanax during these years, unfortunately obscuring her recollection of certain specific names. One person she did mention by name, though, was former Senate Majority Leader and Disney Chairman George Mitchell, who obviously denies the claims, though according to Virginia's memoirs, as well as her sworn deposition, Mitchell was just one of many recognizable figures of the high society that became added to my list of clientele. Of course, being introduced to for a lot more than just a client of massage. It's important to note here that most victims have testified that massage to Epstein and Ghislaine was code for sex. First meeting Mitchell at a dinner party attended by other esteemed...
I need to remind everyone that another reason why people understandably suspect, myself included, understandably suspect Jeffrey Epstein of being an intelligence asset that was running a blackmail operation is because of the fact that aside from these heinous sex crimes that he was committing, he also had cameras everywhere. and seemingly filmed everything that took place in his many properties, including these quote unquote massages.
Billionaires and widely acclaimed scientists, Virginia wrote, "My body was put on the banquet menu." Other prominent figures Virginia named include the late governor of New Mexico, Bill Richardson, who we also know received thousands of dollars in campaign donations from Epstein, billionaire hedge fund manager Glenn Dubin, who Virginia says had sex with her while his pregnant wife was asleep in the next room. His wife being Epstein's former girlfriend, Eva Anderson, by the way. And of course, French modeling agent Jean-Luc Brunel, who Virginia says she was sent to have sex with at many places.
But one man Eileen Ford does associate with in Paris is this man, the head of Karen.
Another guy who just died under mysterious circumstances in prison, this time in Paris.
Models, one of the largest and most prestigious agencies in the country. His name is Jean-Luc Brunel.
Brunel has always carried a reputation of being an absolute monster, dating as far back as the late 80s when a 60 Minutes investigation spearheaded by Diane Sawyer revealed his habit of drugging and abusing models from all over the world. His elusiveness earned him the nickname Le Fantôme, or the Ghost, by French prosecutors. Brunel is also a noted longtime personal friend of Epstein, with flight logs indicating he took at least 25 trips on the Lolita Express from 1998 to 2005. According to a report from The Independent, Brunel established an agreement that he would use his influence within the world of fashion to scope out underage girls to groom for Epstein, noting that Brunel continued this work even in the years following his firing from his original agency. He simply started a new one, of which Epstein invested over $1 million to help get off the ground. Brunel was also known for leaving cryptic messages for Epstein at his Palm Beach residence, according to further unsealed court documents. A few examples that have made their way to the press include "Just did a good one, 18 years, and he has a teacher for you to teach how to speak Russian. She is 2 at times 8 years old, not blonde. Lessons are free and you can have your first today if you call." Epstein had proudly slept with over 1,000 of Brunel's girls, according to Virginia, who also claimed that Brunel once gifted Epstein 12-year-old French triplets for his birthday. As a part of her sworn deposition, Virginia recalled that Giuffre bragged after he met them that they were 12-year-olds and flown over from France because they're really poor over there and their parents needed the money, adding that she had in fact seen these triplets with her own eyes. She continued, "He was so excited about the entire event, replayed it over and over again over the next course of weeks, how cute they were and how you could tell they were really young. He went on to tell me how Brunel bought them in Paris from their parents, offering them the usual sums of money, visas, and modeling career prospects. Laughing the whole way through, Giuffre thought it was absolutely brilliant how easily money seduced all walks of life. Nothing or no one that couldn't be bought." The triplets were flown back to France after Epstein was done with them.
Getting another drink?
Brunel unsurprisingly denied all allegations in 20.
You have an appetite that needs to be stopped, okay?
I need caffeine.
This guy, bro. This guy, bro. This guy.
2 days in a row, I got.
Oh my God! Why are you up at 7:30 2 days in a row?
I'm in streamer training camp.
Oh, okay.
I'm practicing before I go on my main channel.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you, man.
Not actually, it's just practice. It's not real.
Okay.
15. But following Epstein's arrest 4 years later, a new French investigation was launched into the disgraced modeling agent. And in December 2020, Brunel was finally arrested, taken into custody on charges of rape, sexual assault against minors, sexual harassment, criminal conspiracy, and trafficking human beings, while awaiting trial in February.
Interesting hat. Interesting hat from Jean-Luc Brunel. Odd hat, dude. Anyway, I gotta end it here for now. I'll be back tomorrow for more, but I have to go do the podcast right now. Love you guys.